Good morning. Welcome to Grace Point. We're so thrilled to have you with us this morning. I'm Laura Booker. I've been attending Grace Point for about a year with my family, and I'm so thrilled to have found a progressive, inclusive Christian church to have community and to learn and to share and to grow. And I can't wait to meet all of you when we're able to get back together in person. Feel free to say hello in the chat window this morning so we can welcome you if you're new, or say hello if you've been attending Grace Point for a little while. We will be meeting in this online format until it's safe for us to get back together in person. And we'll be starting a new series today called Meaning Making. How might a progressive Christian lens inform our experiences and the ways we find meaning in such challenging and uncertain times? Again, welcome, and we're glad you're here.
Welcome to Grace Point.
We are a progressive Christian church.
A safe place to deconstruct or reconstruct.
To question and to grow.
We are welcoming, affirming, and fully inclusive.
Regardless of age, race,
sexual orientation, gender identity,
physical abilities, or marital or economic status.
We strive to rejoice in our belovedness,
serve our community,
respect our differences,
and love each other well.
We are people who accept and value you for you.
We are Grace Point.
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 Grace Point.
Good job.
We are Grace.
No, just me.
Oh. We are Grace Point.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
We found love that never runs dry, from the depths to the sky, eyes fixed on the one who knows no end. You stand strong for all of time, in the joy, in the trial. You are the beginning and the end. Your love goes on, your love goes on. Ever our heart will see your love in everything. From sky to ocean deep, your love goes on. Through every rise and fall, we are forever yours. One thing we know is sure, your love goes on and on and on. From dawn break into the night, you're here with us, you're on our side. Your arms are forever open wide. You stand strong for all of time, in the joy, in the trial. You are the beginning and the end. Your love goes on, your love goes on. Ever our heart will see your love in everything. From skies to oceans deep, your love goes on. Through every rise and fall, we are forever yours. One thing we know is sure, your love goes on and on and on. Your love unfailing, never shaken. Hope awakens in you. Love unfailing, never shaken. Hope awakens in you. Love
Good morning, Grace Point family, and hello to each GP youth and GP kid who are watching with us. I hope you are all doing really well and having some fun. I miss seeing you in person on Sundays, but I am so grateful we have the opportunity to spend time with one another during our weekly Zoom calls. GP Youth, our junior hires and high schoolers, we gather every Friday at 7 p.m. GP Kids, we gather on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Both gatherings are an opportunity for us to say hello, to get to know one another, to catch up with each other, and to have a whole lot of fun. On Thursdays at 7 p.m., I grab a book from our GP Kids collection right behind me, and I go live with a virtual story time. This week we are reading the beautiful, very earth-loving book called You Are Never Alone, written by the talented Ellen Kelsey and illustrated by the talented Soyeon Kim. And please make a note of this. We are transitioning our virtual story time from our GP Kids Facebook group to our Grace Point page. I hope your families will join us for these special times of community connection. GP parents and caregivers, I have posted our newest discussion guides in our GP Kids and GP Youth Facebook groups. Take a peek at these groups ever so often to see what is being created for and shared with our GP Kids and GP Youth parent communities. I also encourage you to post questions and share resources and to connect with one another as a parent and caregiver community inside of these groups. I'm also emailing out these resources. If you'd like to be a part of our email list or you'd like to be a part of our Facebook groups, simply email me at lisa@gracepoint.net and I will make sure to include you. If your GP youth or GP kid would love to receive some snail mail or a video message or a FaceTime call or an email, simply let me know and I would love to make that happen. If your GP kid or GP youth have a birthday or a celebratory moment coming up, send that email to me with that info as well. I will share that information with our GP community and they'll join you in celebrating your GP kid and GP youth. They would love to. With Earth Day having been celebrated this last Wednesday, April 22nd, our discussion guides for the last week and for this week are talking about enjoying and caring for our beautiful Earth home. The GP Kids discussion guide that is prepared for you is packed with helpful conversation prompts, links to read aloud books, and fun and simple crafts and activities that you can do at home with what you have. This week we are talking about caring for our planet. To care means to show an interest or concern, to help and to protect. Even now, we can find creative ways to care for our wonderful Earth home and the many who inhabit it. And so many of you are making caring choices for our community and our planet. And from this Earthling to you, I say thank you. Peace out, air hugs, and so much love to each and every one of you.
Hello again. We have a few announcements that we wanted to make sure and share with you today. We want to make sure that you know that we're meeting each week at 10:30 on YouTube to hang out as a community before the service begins at 10:45. So feel free to do that in the future. We also want to mention that Reconstruct is still happening virtually every Wednesday evening, and that Books and Brews will have Diana Butler Bass joining for the monthly meeting on April 28th, where they will be discussing the book Grounded. This Thursday, Josh will be hosting a virtual Eucharist meeting where the community will have an opportunity to gather with others, hear a short reflection, and celebrate communion together. You can go to the Grace Point website or check out some of the social media channels where Grace Point has a presence. I know I personally follow Grace Point on Instagram and keep up with all of the different happenings that way. Now I want to move into a time of giving. I know that right now these are difficult times, unprecedented times in terms of people's financial situations. The church community and the church leadership team and our wonderful and amazing staff are still working to make sure to support the Grace Point community so that we can continue meeting together and learning and loving on each other through a variety of different formats. And giving is a way to continue the mission of Grace Point and to continue supporting the staff. And there are a couple of different ways that you have an opportunity to give. You can text Grace Point, make sure not to forget the E on the end, to 77977, or you can go to the Grace Point website. If you are in a position where you are able to set up a recurring weekly or monthly donation, that also is something that helps tremendously. We really appreciate all of you and all of your involvement. Continue to pass along, the information about all of the different events and happenings and the ways that we can continue to gather together and support each other during this time. Thank you.
God, oh God, great and holy, fearing not we come to thee, fearing not the weak and lowly, for your love has set us free. And by the blue sky bending over, by the green earth's flowery home, teach us, Lord, the angel chorus, you are love and love alone. 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 You are. Though the worlds in flames should perish, sun and stars in ruin fall, trust in thee our hearts should cherish. Oh Lord, be our all and all. And with your name the heavens praising, angels hymn no sweeter tone than the songs our hearts are raising. You are love and love alone. 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 You are. You are love and love alone. You are love and love alone. You are love and love alone. You are. Oh, 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 oh. How perfectly our hearts are made for love. Oh, how perfectly our hearts are made for love. How perfectly our hearts are made for love. You are love and love alone. You are love and love alone. You are love and love alone. You are. You are love and love alone. You are love and love alone. You are love.
Good morning, Grace Point. It is so great to see you here this morning. I'm glad you're joining us for our online gathering and week 2 of meaning making. We started last week by talking about the way we seek to find meaning and how meaning, the question of what does this mean, is part of this intrinsic human experience of wanting to know where things belong and where to place them. So that was the introduction. This week, moving forward, I want to spend some time responding to the things that you all have asked, whether in a private message or in the Grace Point Facebook group or online. You've sent some really, really insightful, meaningful questions, and I want to start responding to those. And I want to begin today with a question essentially that a couple people asked in different ways, and I think it's something that we've all probably wrestled with. One person said, during a tragedy, it's really unfortunate that some leaders of faith state this is punishment for, and then they fill in the blank, whatever the thing they're against is. Or when they're trying to console someone's loss, they say it was God's plan, basically making God the scapegoat, right? Another person said, a struggle with some folks saying this is God's way of getting our attention. I bet we've all heard those. I bet many of us, maybe some of us at least, me included, have unfortunately said some of those things before in the past about God's plan and God's getting our attention. So I thought we should take some time today and say, where is God during a pandemic? Where do we locate the divine? And how do we speak of that? And how do we engage that? And I think one of the places many of us, even the people who are saying this is punishment for or this was God's plan, we're drawing that meaning from the Bible. We turn to the sacred text to try to give us wisdom and insight. And that makes sense, right? Because the Bible's born out of human experiences. And one of the deepest human needs is meaning making. It's to know where to put things. It's to know what they mean. And so it's normal that we would go to the Bible and say, what did our ancestors say about this and what was their experience? The problem is that when we see the Bible as some sort of rule book or some sort of answer book that is just giving us the next step to do this, and this, instead of being guided by our ancestors' search for meaning, instead of being guided by their experiences into our own experiences, which was always the point of the Bible, not that we would stop with it, but that the Bible would introduce us to our ancestors and their experiences, and then that would push us into our own journey and our own experiences. When we make the Bible something else, when we make it an answer book or we make it some sort of rule book, we can actually end up using the Bible in sort of a weaponized way. And a weaponized Bible cannot heal, it can only wound. And so when people are saying, oh, this is part of God's plan, that's being drawn from certain understandings of the text, certain understandings of the scripture and the tradition, but actually I don't think it's the best way to use the Bible, because the Bible doesn't have to wound us. The Bible actually can guide us into a healthy, honest approach toward the meaning-making questions we're all asking. And there's one particular story in the Bible that I've come to really appreciate deeply, and it's a story that I've gone back to time and again in really difficult moments when I've had to say some words at a funeral, at the loss of someone, especially someone very young. There are times that you get put in that role and you are searching for words and words fail you. And this story has always spoken to me. And as I was thinking about where is God during a pandemic, this is the story that popped up for me. It's found in John chapter 9. It's a story about Jesus and his disciples, and it's one of the signs in John's gospel. John organizes a chunk of the gospel around these 7 signs Jesus performs. So John 9:1. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man who was blind from birth. Jesus' disciples asked, Rabbi, who sinned so that he was born blind? This man or his parents? Jesus answered, neither he nor his parents. This happened so that God's mighty works might be displayed in him. While it's daytime, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. After he said this, he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and smeared the mud on the man's eyes. Jesus said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam. So the man went away and washed. When he returned, he could see. It's just a really, really interesting story. And the story opens, this scene opens with Jesus' disciples asking a question, or the disciples asking Jesus a question that reveals an assumption that was held by pretty much everybody in the ancient world. No matter how you slice it, almost everybody held this assumption that if something bad happened to you, or if something went wrong, or something unfortunate, if something bad happened to you, it must mean that you've sinned, and this is a punishment for it. Right? I mean, that's what they're saying. Who sinned? This man or his parents? Because he was born blind, so it must have been either him or his parents. He did something in the womb, or they did something before he was born, and he was born blind. That's an assumption everybody held, and it pops up all over the place in the Bible. It pops up in the story of Job, right? Job's this guy who has it all. He has a big family. He's wealthy. Everything's going in his favor. And then systematically, everything gets taken away. All of his children die in a disaster. He becomes sick. He loses everything. All of his flocks, everything's gone, right? And so then some friends, the book of Job is essentially these friends who show up and try to console Job, and they sit with him. But the problem is when they actually begin this long poetic conversation, the friends essentially say that Job must have sinned, that his children who died must have sinned to deserve that punishment, and that Job actually probably deserved something worse, and God was being kind to him by not doing something worse. I mean, with friends like that, right, like you don't really need enemies, but they're just swimming in the waters of conventional theological wisdom of the day. Everybody assumed that if something good happened to you, that the gods were on your side and you had favor. And if something bad happened to you, the gods were angry with you and you needed to do something, right? Like offer something, kill something, give something, so that the gods would get back on your side. And that's exactly what's going here in John chapter 9. These disciples are asking the question, whose fault? Because in their understanding, somebody's to blame. I love what John Shelby Spong says about this. The episode begins with a question. The disciples asked Jesus, who is to be blamed for the man having been born blind? The common theological wisdom of the day held that sickness and tragedy were instruments of divine punishment. Religion had proclaimed that with the all-powerful supernatural God in charge, there must be an explanation for human pain and tragedy that protected the justice of God. So sickness meant that someone was getting what was deserved. Now, in this particular case, the sickness, the issue is that this man was born blind. And so either he did something in the womb or his parents did something before he was born that caused this to happen. And I think I usually used to read this text as these disciples are super not self-aware. They're super insensitive. I mean, this man is sitting by the side of the road looking for help, and they want to turn him into a theological debate. What you have to understand is they really weren't being insensitive. They were just assuming what was taken for granted by everybody in their world. If you did something, if you have an issue, if you have an illness, if something goes wrong, you're being punished. And because Jesus is their teacher, they look to him to gain wisdom. They look to him for a response. The disciples are trying to make meaning out of the situation. This man is born blind. What does it mean? Right? He was born blind. What do we do with it? What does it mean? Whose fault? How do we arrange it? And 2,000 years later, this feels kind of familiar to us sometimes, doesn't it? I mean, even when we've deconstructed sort of and left behind an old understanding of God, that, you know, God is an old man who has a big beard, who wears a long robe and lives above the clouds. Like when that God, we no longer believe in that God, it can still creep in to the back of our mind when something goes wrong, right? When you're late for work and you get a flat tire, or when you lose a job, or when you get a diagnosis or experience a loss, we can begin to wonder, like, is this a God smack? Am I being punished? Is God trying to teach me a lesson of some sort? And if we don't think about that, there are plenty of tone-deaf theologians who are going to bring it up for us. I noticed over the past couple of weeks, there were several prominent conservative pastors, theologian type folks who were offering these sorts of answers online. And they're just not helpful, right? It's not helpful. Or if something terrible happens, people conclude it was just God's plan. And if that's the case, then God's plans really stink sometimes, right? We can't imagine the way those kind of statements also affect people who are going through loss and pain. When you come up to somebody who's experiencing grief and say, oh, this is all part of God's plan, or you say, oh, God really just needed another angel. I've seen that time and time again, because in moments of grief, we often don't know what to do. We haven't been trained for it. We've been taught to avoid pain. And when pain inevitably shows up, we have no clue what to do with it. And so often, and I've been as guilty as anybody, some of the stuff that comes out of our mouths when we're just trying to make meaning and we're just trying to be helpful can actually cause deeper wounds and cause the pain to be worse than it was even in the beginning. And of course, we want to find meaning in the things that happen to us. We want them to matter in some sort of larger way. But the way we seek it often can lead to making God look terrible and create sort of a victim blaming process, right? After all, what would a sufficient response be when we ask, why did this happen? Let's say you lost your job. And why? Why would this happen? What was the reason behind it? And what if God actually said to you, here's what happened. You know that stop sign that you did a rolling stop through the other day? You thought nobody saw it. There was no police around. You got by with it scot-free. I saw. And now I'm punishing you because of a rolling stop sign. Right? Like, isn't that crazy? But we want to know why. And the reality is there is no why that would ever be sufficient. Not in a meaning sort of way, right? We need a lens for processing grief and pain that doesn't turn God into a monster and doesn't blame victims for their suffering. Because if we don't learn to process and transform our pain, this is brilliance from Richard Rohr, if we don't learn to process our pain and transform it, we will transmit it. And so many times in the world, that's exactly what we do. We hold on to it. We don't know what to do with it. We want to keep it outside of us, keep it away from us. And in doing so, we just start hot potatoing it around to the people in our lives or even people we don't know who just happen to come in contact with us. Pain has a way of spreading and doing much more damage than if we actually dealt with it head on. But back to John 9. Jesus' disciples are trying to make meaning. They're trying to make sense of what's happening. And they have no concepts that we have of modern medicine, of reasons why this man would have been born blind. And here's the thing, to be fair, we know those things, and still sometimes when things happen, we dip our toe back into that older way of seeing things, that previous way of seeing things that says, gosh, if this happened, I must have done something to deserve it. Things don't just happen by chance. I did something to deserve it, right? So these disciples are operating under an assumption that even many of us still reluctantly will drift back into when things are happening. And here's Jesus' response to their question. Who sinned, this man or his parents that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither he nor his parents. This happened so that God's mighty works might be displayed in him. Now that last line, if you read it a certain way, could be read like this. Well, God made him blind so that I could come by and heal him, and so that everybody would think God is great. Right? That is a way you could read that, but fortunately, I don't think that's what Jesus is saying. One of my favorite renderings of this is found in the Message that Eugene Peterson paraphrased translation. And here's what he says. Walking down the street, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, causing him to be born blind? Now listen to this response, the way Peterson translates it. Jesus said, you're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. There is no such cause and effect here. Look instead for what God can do. Look instead for what God could do. I love it. You're asking the wrong question. Jesus' response is almost to say this. We don't know. Why is this man born blind? We don't know. This whole God punishing him or God punishing his parents, that's not how things work. That's not how anything works. I mean, could it be sometimes that things just happen because they just happen? Right? It isn't that there's somebody, maybe it's a super boring reason, because it just happened. And maybe the meaning that we're looking for is not found in the event, but in the response. I think that's what Jesus is getting at. We don't know why this guy was born blind. He just is. And now we get to do something in response to it. Look, I don't believe that God engineers pandemics. I don't believe God sends earthquakes or tornadoes. I don't believe God causes cancer or car accidents. I believe that these things unfortunately happen. They're just part of the world we live in. And when it comes to earthquakes, and tornadoes and pandemics, there are natural explanations for why they happened. It's not some big divine scheme. It's not God twisting the knobs and pulling the levers to get even with us. It's just something that happens. I do believe that meaning is made in the way we respond to these things. And I think this, when Jesus says, look instead for what God can do, I think that's the bit he's talking about, the response. It's an invitation to move our energy and attention from either an unknowable or an unsatisfying why to the potential of a what now. And we spend all of our time on a why that will just leave us either confused or unsatisfied, when we could actually be channeling all of our energy into, okay, what now? What are we going to do about this now? And this was a really interesting time in Nashville when just a month or so ago we had a tornado. And what happened in our city? People shifted to the what now. And people started going out and helping each other and started helping each other clear property. And it was just this beautiful, in this tragic moment, in this darkness, there was this beautiful light beginning to emerge as human beings moved on to the what now. And I think that's what we're being invited to do. Jesus is not saying this guy's here as a pawn in God's game so God can look good. Jesus is saying, we don't know. That's the wrong question. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to respond? How are we going to engage? One of the terms in Christian theology is to talk about the life of Jesus is the incarnation, right? It's the theological term to talk about the way theologians have argued for generations and a couple thousand years about how the whole Jesus thing works, right? And so incarnation is a way of saying that in the life of Jesus, we experience the divine, however you want to understand that. John Dominic Crossan said Jesus is what God looks like with sandals, right? So like that's the image, right? Incarnation, God doing something in the world through Jesus. But I actually think limiting that to Jesus is one of our biggest, greatest theological mistakes. We have spent our time and energy arguing about how it happens in the life of Jesus. And we've failed to realize at times that the in-fleshness of God isn't isolated to Jesus. It's actually something that happens in and through every single one of us. Later in the Gospel of John, John will actually say, John's Jesus will actually say, you don't be so shocked about what I'm doing. You'll do greater things than this. Our friend Doug Pagitt wrote a book called Greater Than, which is all about that. People in the world who are incarnating the divine, people who are through their lives are expressing the what now, and God is showing up in them and through them, and in the what now they are able to begin to make some meaning. What if Jesus meant that? What if Jesus meant that we get to do greater? That when we go into the world, we're not just a bag of flesh and bones, that somehow as image bearers of the divine, we move into the world incarnating that reality. What if meaning is found in the ways we give ourselves to the good work of what now? The work of loving and caring for our neighbors, in the ways we embody compassion and love, in the ways we open ourselves up to receive those same things in our own moments of need. God does not. I'm not certain about a lot of things. I'm really not. But I would almost teeter on the edge of certainty on this. God does not plan disaster and disease. I actually believe God experiences them with us. I don't think God is somewhere above the sky going, what is today? Oh, it's April something. That must mean it's time for an earthquake over there. Right? That's not how God works. I don't think God sits up there and watches this stuff happen and then just says, I'm not going to fool with that. I don't think that's how it works. I think that God, for us to be free, for us to be able to make our choices, for us to be able to experience life and love and all those things, we have to be free, which means God has to experience things with us, not separate from us. And what does the cross mean? If it doesn't mean that God suffers in solidarity with all who suffer. I think one of the profound, powerful things about the cross is when people look at the cross and say, in some way, God was present in Jesus in that moment doing a thing. What was the thing? I think part of the thing was God identifying with those who suffer and God suffering right with them. That God stands in solidarity with everybody who mourns. That God stands in solidarity with everyone who grieves. That God stands in solidarity with everyone who's been oppressed and forgotten and marginalized. That if you want to find God, it will not be up there looking down on it, but it'll be right here, smack dab in the middle of it, experiencing it, crying our tears, feeling our heartbreak. That's where you'll find the divine. I believe God does make her presence known. In every act of kindness and mercy and generosity and compassion, God reveals her ultimate plan, which is that we would love each other well, which is that we would shift our focus from the why, an unknowable and often, I guarantee you, unsatisfying why, and move on to the energy, invitation, and possibility of what now. So where do you find God during a pandemic like this? You find God in the people who are putting their well-being at risk for the well-being of others. Where do you find God in a pandemic? You find God in neighbors who decide to stay home, right? They decide to shelter in place because that's what it takes to beat this thing. in all the little ways we choose love, compassion, and all the ways we choose to embody and incarnate the love that we call God into this world, that's where you'll find God. She's everywhere, doing good through real flesh and blood human beings just like me and you. Why? Why is this pandemic happening? Why do we experience loss? Those are unknowable and unsatisfying. But what now? What are we going to do? What is our response going to be? And it's interesting that it took Jesus getting his hands dirty for this to happen, right? He stoops down, he spits into the mud, which had to have been just a very uncomfortable scene, right? And this blind man is asked to be healed, and he hears Jesus spitting. And I would bet that this man has experienced his share of abuse, his share of neglect, his share of being mocked and ridiculed and mistreated. And yet Jesus gets down, makes mud, places it on his eyes, and sends him to wash, and he came back seeing. As we move through this time, it's going to often take our hands getting dirty to love one another well, to make sure everybody's taken care of, to make sure nobody gets left out or forgotten. It's the hard work of being light in the world. It's hard work, and it's the most rewarding work you can possibly engage in. So, I don't know the why about anything. And I can give you I can't give you scientific, I'm not a scientist, but scientists can give you, doctors can give you, people who know fields can give you reasons why things happen, very concrete, literal reasons at times. But when it comes to the bigger question, the existential why, what if we were to lay that down for a bit? And what if we were to lean into the possibility of what now?
Blessed are the ones who do not bury all the broken pieces of their heart. Blessed are the tears of all the weary, pouring like a sky of falling stars. Blessed are the wounded ones in mourning, brave enough to show us all their scars. Blessed are the hurts that are not hidden, open to the healing touch of God. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again.
Blessed are the ones who walk in kindness, even in the face of great abuse. Blessed are the deeds that go unnoticed, serving with unguarded gratitude. And blessed are the ones who fight for justice, longing for the coming day of peace. Blessed is the soul that thirsts for righteousness, welcoming the last, the lost, the least. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little
Blessed are the ones who suffer violence, still have strength to love their enemies. Blessed is the faith of those who persevere, as though they fall, they'll never know defeat. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope will be restored. Peace will come again.
All right, Grace Point, it's been another good Sunday together here online. We miss you so much. We miss being in the same space as you. We missed your hugs. I miss the energy I feel from you when I'm doing the sermon in the room with all of you. But what we've done in this time has been essential, and it's been good work. We have done good work by staying home. And I know that the mayor has released a plan, and our leadership council is spending time reviewing that, reflecting on it, thinking about what it looks like for us going forward. I think what we basically see is that we are no closer than a month from being able to do some kind of in-person gathering, but that feels unlikely because everything would have to go perfect. There has to be 14 days of decline, and then phase 1, and then 14 days, and then phase 2. So we're still at the place where we just don't know. We don't know what the next step's going to look like. We're actively engaged with it. We will get back in a room with all of us as soon as humanly possible, as soon as it's safe to do as humanly possible. We don't want to rush this and end up being part of a flare-up and a larger problem. So just know that we are working on it, we're thinking about it, we're wrestling with it, and that we're anxious and excited to get back in the same room with you. But you have been incredible. Our engagement goes up every week. Participation is up every week. I mean, there's just some really, really fantastic things happening even in the midst of this. And that's part of us as a community going from the why to the what now. We didn't choose these circumstances, right? We didn't pick them. But we get to decide what we do with them. And Grace Point, you from top to bottom, from our leadership council to our staff to our community members, you are doing an amazing job during this time. Let's keep it up. Let's keep loving each other well. Let's keep staying in contact. And let's be excited and hopeful for a day, maybe, hopefully, possibly, potentially soon, where we'll get to give each other hugs and see each other once again. Hope you have a great week. Don't forget about all the opportunities you've heard about today for engagement this week. We look forward to seeing you at each and every one of those that you can make. Hope that you are well, and we'll talk to you soon. Grace Point, grace and peace be with you.